Hey guys, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL and welcome back. Today I want to talk about the subject of fan art. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it something that you should avoid like the plague, or is it something that's necessary? Is it something that you should only be doing early on in your career and abandon once you become more professional? Or is it something that you can benefit from throughout your entire career? The reason I want to talk about this is because I've listened to a lot of YouTubers and professionals and artists. I have my own experiences as a professional, as a director, as a teacher, and you can get very mixed opinions, very conflicting, very contradictory opinions. And like a lot of different life decisions, one size doesn't necessarily fit all. What might be a great benefit to some people is not a benefit to others. So I really want to dig deep into this topic and give you my objective, professional, and most balanced, helpful opinion on the matter. And again, coming from the perspective of somebody who works with a lot of students, somebody who works with students of all ages, from teenagers all the way up into people in their 60s and 70s, and somebody who's done a lot of hiring in studios, which is a very important role to play in this conversation because I've been in the position as a director of being the one who decides whether or not somebody gets hired, right? So, to start us off, fan art can take many different forms. It goes through different trends. For instance, growing up, I was a huge Disney fan. I've mentioned it a million times how from a very young age, probably Lucas's age, my son's age, from 6, 7, 8, 9, my son's 9 at the moment, I really kind of started to identify myself as a Disney artist. And I even made myself a little business card when I was around Lucas's age. There was a cartoon of a guy sitting down at a drafting table with plaid pants and a black vest, looking all vintage in 1920s, like at a drafting table, at an animation table, and it said, "Professional Disney Cartoonist." And I carried it around with me for years. It might even be lying around somewhere. I don't know. I think I lost it. But it was something that I really identified myself as, and it was something that came into my life at a very, very young age. It's what I would call my artistic hook. It got me in somewhere. It gave me a foot in the door of this big, very complex, very elaborate world of art that we live in, with all the different genres that I could choose from. That was the one that I stuck to. That evolved. And when video games became more prevalent, that Disney art style started to translate more into video game studio styles, such as Blizzard art. And for many years, back when I started playing World of Warcraft back in 2004, 2005, at the early on in its inception during Classic WoW, a lot of us artists really fell for it. And it wasn't a huge leap from Disney. I mean, look what Blizzard does nowadays with their cinematics for World of Warcraft or StarCraft or Overwatch. These are full-on Disney quality productions, right? They engage you emotionally. The character design and animation is top-tier stuff. The storytelling is amazing. So a lot of people started to become Blizzard fan artists or fan arts for different types of video games that were quite similar to that, like League of Legends, for instance. Fast forward, not so far, and Hayao Miyazaki, really brings anime and manga into Western cultures, into their perspective. And all of a sudden, back when I was teaching in university, was starting to become aware of the fact that anime and manga were really starting to become mainstream. Because prior to that, with things like Ninja Scroll or Akira or some things like that, a lot of people kind of looked at it and went, ugh, it's very poorly animated. From a Disney classical animator's perspective, it was like, ugh, it's kind of very amateur looking, right? But Miyazaki showed us another side of it. He exposed us to a quality that a lot of people hadn't been aware of. Not only to us older artists, but also to the younger artists. That's where it really struck a chord. And nowadays, I'd say as a teacher, looking at portfolios and working with students of anybody between the ages of, the youngest I've taught was probably around 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, all the way up to probably around their 30s, are 95% anime influenced art, manga influenced art. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. As an old person, if you go back 10 years ago, they would say, the professional opinion would say, if you want to get a professional career, you got to take that crap out of your portfolio. That's kids' art. That's not mature art. It's funny that we weren't saying that about Disney at the time. Curious, right? We look at people who could pull off Disney style very well and say, wow, that's pretty good. You really got a grasp of it. When I had applied to Sheridan College in Toronto, where Bobby Chiu taught for years, it was very classical, or what you'd call commercial style animation. And I specifically, as an artist, wanted to pursue that particular style of animation. I wasn't such a huge fan of the more experimental Canadian Film Board or National Film Board style of animation. I really wanted to go all in Disney. That was really where my aspirations were. Sheridan College was the place for that. And that was the place where they would really teach you how to hone those skills and develop yourself in a much more commercial friendly way that would get you a job at a place like Disney. In fact, at the time, I don't know if they still do this, but Disney very often would send recruiters directly to Sheridan during certain exhibits or vernissages, and they would pluck some of the higher level artists, the more accomplished students, to work straight in Disney. So that was the reality for Disney, but for anime and manga back then, they were like, no, that's kid art. It's not serious, it's not mature, take it out, or we won't hire you. They would see, as soon as they'd see a manga drawing or something that looked like it was influenced by, Sailor Moon or Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon, a lot of people would just go, no man, it's just a kid. Now fast forward to 2022, at the date of the recording of this art talk, and the world has changed, has it not? Now, everywhere you look, you see nothing but genius. Everywhere you look, you see nothing but these masterpieces created by some of the most gifted Japanese animators and studio producers and graphic novel artists and comic book artists, and wow, it's really exploded. Furthermore, as a professional and as a teacher, in my 40s now, in my mid-40s, I look at a lot of these artists who are older now. We're talking about artists now that have 10, 15 years of professional fundamental experience under their belt, still drawing that style of art. I'm thinking of some of my students right now, and their artwork just will blow you right out of the water. And furthermore, you get these artists, like a student I just started with today from France, Anne-Lise, if you're listening, bonjour, who has a more modern style of art, but mixed in with that anime influence. She walks that line, and holy, I literally, we spent half of the class, I was just sitting there fanboying over her stuff. It was freaking gorgeous. She sits on that cusp. She understands the modern and the past, and she kind of bridges them together to create these beautiful Gothic designs. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Would I in a million years look at somebody's portfolio who can accomplish something like that and in all maturity and in all professionalism say, take that out of your portfolio? No, that would be very unprofessional of me to do that. I would be forfeiting access to an incredibly gifted artist. So yeah. However, here's the thing. Fan art has its place, and it has a very important, and I would argue constant place in a person's art. Look at different artists that you admire. Look at all of these YouTubers and artists that you admire. Rest assured, they have a very solid influence in their artistic style that they exploit, that they emphasize, that they teach, that they preach about in their own artwork. They have spent many years, sometimes many decades, developing these artistic styles, and they've developed into something that's incredible, right? Think about that for a second. So let's go back. Let's go back to where it all starts. And I want to walk you through an artistic career and share with you my personal thoughts and feelings on where fan art and where exterior influences can work for you or where they can work against you. And right off the bat, if you're starting very, very young, like if I think about myself, for instance, if I think a lot about some of my younger students, in my opinion, at that particular phase in your life, I think it's mandatory to do fan art. And there's a reason for it. It's exposing you to a lot of very important elements of art. Number one, it's giving you a hook. It's giving you a foot in the door. It's giving you a sense of belonging to an industry where you can say, I am a part of this art club and I'm going to grow and evolve and hone my skills by being a part of this community, by being a part of the manga community, by being part of the anime community, by being part of the Disney community, by being part of the Blizzard or the League of Legends or the Riot Games community. I want that to be how I identify myself narratively, visually, graphically, etc. And by doing so, what you're doing is you're doing what in my opinion, what is one of the most important foundational skills that we need to develop as artists. And that's developing a sense of focus, a sense of direction, a sense of purpose. And you're also exposing yourself to a very high standard of art, right? Give or take. For instance, a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a show like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is very cool, and the subject material is very cool, and it's super fun for kids. I watch Yu-Gi-Oh! with my son all the time. Artistically, it's not one of the best, right? It's not one of the best, but it's got that cool factor. So cool. Get yourself in there. Indulge in the cool factor. Kirby might not be the most graphically ambitious video game character, but he's famous for a reason. There's a reason why Meta Knight is famous for a reason. He's got that cool factor. He's got that approachability. Kirby is designed using basic geometric shapes. He's very easy to start to grasp. It starts to give you a sense of three-dimensional form. Kirby taught Lucas how to rotate a sphere, how to draw a head turning in different directions, how to place the eyes, nose, and mouth in different directions. That's an excellent entry-level approach to drawing. And you're doing it in the context of something you love, a really awesome video game. As you evolve and move forward, you get into the Meta Knight, then you get into Pokemon, then you get into all of these different cartoons, these different video games, these different animes, these different mangas that are slowly upping the bar. So by the time you even reach a point in your life where you're ready to start pursuing things in a more professional manner, where you want to go to school and start to really hone those fundamentals, you've got a damn good head start. And if I look back at my artistic path, if it wasn't for fanning over Beauty and the Beast and Tarzan and all of these different things growing up, if I wasn't a huge fan of Looney Tunes and John Kay and Don Bluth and all of these different animators, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now, because I would have looked out at this huge, vast, intimidating world of art and have absolutely no idea where I fit my foot in the door. What did I do? I made an understandable decision at the beginning of my professional art education. I pursued a degree in fine arts. Why? Because the attitude back in the 1980s and 90s was, or specifically in the 90s for me, was fine arts was the only art education that a serious artist would pursue, regardless of the fact that I'd spent my entire life drawing Disney characters, right? It didn't compute that animation was a serious career. Back then, I had the attitude that if you're a serious artist, you're a fine artist. I even quote John Howe in his documentary called There and Back Again, which you might be able to find on Vimeo, although I think they pulled it. He talks about how I consider myself an illustrator and I don't take any shame in saying that. That's a really 40 plus thing to say, because he too came from a world where fine arts was the only art that was really regarded with any kind of prestige. Every illustration was more for kids. And you kind of start to see this trend. First, it's illustration that's not serious. Then it's animation that's not considered serious. Now, animation and illustration are both considered probably the primary art careers that most people pursue. When you go to university, most people are taking illustration. Most jobs are in illustration. Most stability is in illustration. Most career versatility is in illustration. But now, a lot of professionals, or at least we're coming out of this now, for a long period of time, for decades, a lot of professionals would say, stay away from manga. Stay away from anime. It's not doing you any good. It's making your portfolio look very amateur. But that's changing. But then when you do get into university, when you do get into school, what happens then? Well, when you get into school, all of a sudden you start doing things like life drawing and figure drawing, and you start learning about things like perspective and three-dimensional form and composition and visual storytelling and rendering, color, value, etc., etc., etc. All of these intricacies, these fundamentals, you have to start breaking certain habits you've had. You have to, because one of the things that only doing what you like at an earlier age does for you is it puts you into a state of comfort. I compare everything to kittens nowadays because I have my little almost 3-month-old Gimli at home. Every living creature needs their, quote, home base. So when you bring a new kitten into the house, they have this spot that smells like them, that feels like them, a place that they can call home, where their litter is and where their food is and where their bed is, where their scent is everywhere. All these, quote, scent soakers, so to speak. We're no different as humans. We're no different as children, as teenagers, as young adults into middle age and into older adulthood. We need our home base. We need a comfort zone, and breaking free from that comfort zone can be very, very scary. And that's the first thing that school does. You've lived in this comfort zone. You've lived in this home base of manga up until your early 20s. Right? Up until you're 19, 20, 21 years old when you start college or university. And you've been able to rely on that security blanket for a really long time to be able to pull off art to a certain level. But like most young kittens, so to speak, and of course when you're 20, you're far from a kitten. I just love kittens, so you're gonna have to put up with that. But you have to break free. You have to learn how to survive on your own. This is just the reality of life. You have to leave the nest. You have to be able to explore. You have to learn how to hunt on your own. So when you go to university and you go to college and you start to learn things professionally, you're being handed some hunting tools to be able to find the prey, to basically, if I was to quote Jackson Galaxy, to hunt, catch, kill, eat, right? You have to go through those motions in order to learn how to land a job, how to feed yourself, how to satisfy your life, how to pay your bills, how to find some kind of stability. Without those fundamentals, all you're doing is repeating what's already been done. But when you arm yourself with the fundamentals, you're starting to develop the ability to create uniquely, create professionally. So you go from being somebody who was really good at copying, was very good at imitating styles and standards and stuff like that, to all of a sudden being able to realize that, holy shit, I don't need that security blanket to be able to create on my own. And that's usually at a certain point along this transition, you go through an incredible state of stress and insecurity because all of a sudden you don't have that security blanket of being able to draw what you like, right? Draw what you're comfortable with. There's an awkwardness, there's an insecurity period, and then at a certain point you find yourself standing outside in a field of grass, hypothetically speaking, out in the backyard going, I know how to fend for myself. And you realize you start to become capable of creating the art that you thought was only reserved for the gods. That time, that moment in my life where I looked at my own art and I said, holy shit, I can create original work that lives up to a standard of those artists that I deified growing up, because growing up I had zero clue on how they did what they did. It was just, I would look at Dungeons and Dragons art, I would look at animation art, I would look at fantasy illustrations, and I would just go, I'm never going to be able to do that. it doesn't even compute in my brain. I can't do that any more than I can jump off the top of a building and land on my feet without hurting myself. It's just impossible. But here I am in my young adulthood, and I'm starting to come to the realization that I can do this. I can freaking do this. And that is, if you want to know what euphoria feels like, there it is, right? And we continue this. This euphoric feeling, this high that we get from our abilities becomes addictive. And the more we move forward, the more we start to really depend more on really adhering, sticking, gluing ourselves to these technicalities, to the technicalities of art. And what we might not be realizing is that after a period of time, what you start taking for granted is the fact that those technicalities are no longer what you're struggling and straining to achieve. They're kind of there whether or not you like it, whether or not you want it. It's kind of like at the beginning when you're first learning how to ride a bike. You keep falling and scraping yourself up and falling and falling and falling and falling. And then at a certain point, you just ride your bike and you just roll. But regardless, you still got that memory of that injury. You still got that memory of those struggles. So you stick to those and you ride your bicycle with caution. You move forward with caution, but at a certain point you realize, I don't need to think about it anymore. It's just there. And that's when euphoria V2 kicks in. When you realize you can let go of those training wheels. You realize that you can ride all on your own. You don't need to adhere to those fundamentals. So what happens is you just have fun drawing for a little while. And after a little period of time, after a short period of time, usually a couple of years, something starts to kick in. You start to develop this feeling about your artwork that it's not good enough. You start to develop this feeling about your artwork that without these training wheels, without holding on to these without doing something new, without evolving yourself psychologically, emotionally, you start to feel like you're just drawing the same old crap over and over and over again. And you start to get bored with your artwork. And that's usually when artists hit one of their biggest crises. The first is when you leave the nest and you start to learn the fundamentals professionally in a school system or in a mentorship system online. And the second is when you're on your own, you've got those fundamentals, but what the hell, what cool shit can I produce with it? I have no idea, because I'm still way too afraid to leave those training wheels. I'm still too afraid to let go of those fundamentals because I'm afraid that things are going to fall apart. And it's at that point, you have to make a leap of faith. You have to either A, discover on your own, or B, speak to a professional who can look at your artwork and say, you're ready. It's time to let go of those training wheels. It's time to fly. And when you do, this, my dear ladies and gentlemen, is when you close your eyes, you forget about all of those years of school, and you start to revert back to your childhood. You start to go back to those geeky little anime early years in your life. You go back to the Yu-Gi-Ohs. You go back to the Pokemons. You go back to the Kirbys. You go back to the Beauty and the Beasts and the Tarzans and the Pocahontases. You go back to the World of Warcrafts and to the Starcrafts and to the League of Legends and to the Fallout 4s and all of that shit, all those things that you grew up just nerding out over. And you start to learn the value of the most important thing that an artist in that position will ever learn, and that is rediscovering the cool factor. Rediscovering the cool factor. Now it's time to just do cool shit. It's time to indulge. It's time to have fun. And what you're going to realize is you don't need training wheels to achieve it. Those fundamentals are now part of your DNA. You can let go. You can just create. I've quoted in the past, one of my favorite quotes is, learn the fundamentals of art so well that you can one day abandon the fundamentals and start creating the real thing. Art. And the art form can take any form that you wish it to take. But when you can let go and fly, and you realize that those years and years and years of fan art, those years and years of of just nerding out over cool shit as a kid, all of those experiences you had growing up that you thought you had to completely abandon to become a professional, all of a sudden you realize, you just had to put them on the back burner and let them simmer for a little while, and you can now bring them all back. The art that you see me produce today, the art, these folklorish characters from Slavic or Vietnamese or Greek or indigenous backgrounds, this Lovecraft fan art that I do type of stuff, all of this is just me being absolutely and utterly indulgent. I'm doing whatever the hell pleases me. I'm having fun, I'm sculpting, I'm creating, I'm adapting, I'm reinterpreting through the lens of somebody who had to learn at a certain point in his life to let go of my training wheels and just be a kid again. Just have fun again. Just create. And I swear to God, man, all of a sudden the coolest stuff starts to pop out of your artwork. I might have mentioned this in the past, but I ever so strongly encourage you to check out Anthony Jones's Gumroad, which is called Exploring the Cool Factor or something like that. Just look up Anthony Jones Gumroad Cool Factor. It's like $3.50. It's probably some of the best money you'll ever spend, because it's a very short video where he shows you examples of art in the past that might not be technically as strong as the most contemporary concept art and illustrations are with the new technology and the new skills that we've got. But a real professional knows how to look at these old examples of art and be able to extract what's cool about it, extract what really makes your pupils dilate, makes you go, oh shit, that looks so cool. And to be able to now adapt that and modernize that cool factor into art of nowadays, the art of today, and bring it up to a more modern standard while not taking for granted the very thing that got you there in the first place, the very thing that made you want to become an artist in the first place. So just realize that at no point in time in your artistic career are you wasting time. If you are exploring, if you're observing, if you are analyzing, if you are scrutinizing, if you're comparing your art to these cool masters, to these awesome artists that just make you want to be that, know for a fact, and this isn't, I'm not giving you lip service here, know for a fact that you are going to achieve that, but you have to go through those necessary steps to get there. And guaranteed, it might seem like a long path ahead of you, but every single milestone you reach is a bigger and greater and more satisfying sense of euphoria each time, until that one final day that you finally let go and just soar. And it is the most amazing feeling, and it's worth the wait. Trust me on that one. All right. With that said, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.